Chris, what is our third main topic today?
This is from Amber H. Hi, John and crew from the UK. So just read an article on Digital Spy stating that Matt Reeves has interest in doing Mr. Freeze in his Batman films. I absolutely love this idea. Victor Freeze is one of my favorite rogues. After the movie that shall not be named butchered him, I fully trust Reeves to make this villain glorious. Thoughts?
All right, thanks a lot for sending that in. And yeah, there's a lot of Batman theme today, but this is one of them, and it's an interesting question. You know, what Matt Reeves was able to do with the Batman, and of course we did a 4.5 hour open spoiler discussion yesterday, and we've got a part 2 of that coming soon. But what he was able to do in that movie was absolutely remarkable. And while a lot of different comic book movies claim to be more grounded, none of them have been able to do it to the level that Matt Reeves did. But it's because of that grounded nature of the Batman that I think a lot of Batman's rogue gallery are disqualified from ever being in this franchise, right? Like Killer Croc. You can't have this kind of a Batman movie and then have Killer Croc, pop up and be part of it, right? Like, I think it just disqualifies a number of them. And somebody brought up maybe a month ago. So,
Siri, be
Siri,
quiet.
my watch. About a month ago, somebody brought up the idea of Dr. Freeze, or Mr. Freeze, I should say. And I kind of instantly dismissed the idea and said, nah, no, not in this. Because all I have when I think about that are images of a shaven head Arnold Schwarzenegger going, let's put it on ice, and like, I just have these nightmares of it. And in the course of, it's a fantastical, but the more I think about it, after watching the Batman, the more I think about it, all you'd have to do really to do a Mr. Freeze is stretch the plausibility of science a little, not a ton, just a little, and ground it a little bit more. Like, for instance, this Riddler, we didn't see walking around in a one-piece green leotard with question marks, they grounded it a lot. You could take the concept of Mr. Freeze, ground it a little bit more, because I'll tell you what, the drama and the story of Mr. Freeze fits in perfectly with the type of movie Matt Reeves has done. You talk about a guy who's motivated by his love for his wife and is facing unspeakable tragedy that, as a scientist himself, he could not save his wife. He couldn't do it. And his last remaining hope was to freeze her, essentially, until he could try to figure out a way to save his wife. And we talked the other day about the great villains in movies are ones that are villains, but we can empathize with them to a degree. Who does not empathize with Freeze when you really understand his story, that he is motivated irrationally with being driven by nothing but wanting to save his wife? A person like that could do horrific things. And in that sense, it really works. So while I initially dismissed the idea of a Mr. Freeze, after watching the Batman, I'm like, you know what? I feel differently. And apparently, so does Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves was talking about this. This comes just from the folks at Game Rant who write the following. This came during one of the press events for the Batman, where Reeves, answering questions, by explaining his fascination with finding the grounded version of everything, saying that for him, there is a grounded version of Mr. Freeze. While the director seems proud of how the comic book faithful, the Batman has turned out, he does seem puzzled by how to unwind the fantastical and see, well, how could that make sense here? In Mr. Freeze's case, were the icy villain ever to be used in a film more like his or Christopher Nolan's? I think there's actually a grounded version of that story, which could be really powerful and could be really great, Reeves said. And again, that comes just from the folks over at Game Rant. So he's saying, look, I think within these characters, there's a way to find the core human story, ground it down to that, and tell it from there. And while there are still many members of the Batman's rogue gallery that I think are completely disqualified from Matt Reeves' universe, I've come around to thinking that Mr. Freeze is actually one that could probably kind of work. Rob, you're hearing these comments from Matt Reeves. You've seen the Batman twice. We're not spoiling anything, but do you think there's a way to, like Riddler, tell a story that's kind of faithful to who that character is, but ground it in such a way that it works in this Matt Reeves universe?
Absolutely. I mean, anyone who knows the Batman the Animated Series, one of the great episodes of that show was Mr. Freeze. Is that, I forget the name of the episode, but it's heartbreaking and
that's what gave him his new origin story.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, we've seen, look, The Dark Knight, which we're going to talk about on Movie Club tomorrow, shows us a much more grounded version of Joker. An agent of chaos, a man who disrupts the Gotham underworld, wages war on Batman, but somebody that's absolutely believable. The first thing he does is rob a bank, in the beginning of that movie. I think Mr. Freeze, depending on what, like we still think of him, like you pointed out, as Arnold, but in that freeze contraption. Well,
Yeah.
what if he's doing something like, I don't know, he's a serial killer that's freezing body parts to reanimate his wife's corpse or something like that, and he gets the press dub him Mr. Freeze, or does it have to be the character that's in that suit or something? Perhaps, it really depends. You could even do a Killer Croc, John. I think you could, if you figured out the way to do it, to ground it in reality. So I think, sure, absolutely, you could do a Mr. Freeze.
Chris, you were talking about the story of it. Is there a way? I mean, look, again, you stretched it a little bit. Is it really outside of the realm of reality that a guy, in trying to save his wife, experimented on himself and now has a condition that he has to actually be in a controlled temperature that's colder? That's not completely crazy if a way Matt Reeves can do it. I don't know. Is a Mr. Freeze something that could work in this Matt Reeves Batman universe?
Absolutely. These things aren't far off from the realm of possibility, right? We already are doing things with cryogenics. So we just, in this particular universe, in Gotham, in this world, that's science that's already happening. It's on the cutting edge of science, right? And I think this is such a great character to bring in here because, like Riddler, right? This is a character who has such a strong ideology that you can follow, that makes sense, that you can empathize with, like you were stating. But even more so because it's so directly tied to the idea of losing his loved one and wanting to preserve that, right? And as Bruce is struggling with this still and is just completely broken from losing his loved ones, how does he combat somebody who's dealing with that and trying to prevent that kind of loss? The whole story with Nora is beautiful, and what they do in that Paul Dini episode, in Sub-Zero, the animated film, in your favorite thing in the entire world, Batman Beyond. Freeze is such an interesting character with so many layers, who at the end of the day really wants to be a good man and a good husband. He's just really, really lost and fighting for this thing he loves so much that he doesn't really understand how to exist in a world without her. I think it'd be beautiful to see on screen done well.
Well, you convinced me. I'm convinced.
And think about, this is sound really weird, but from an almost philosophical point of view, one of the best iterations of Mr. Freeze, I know this is going to sound weird, but is in Harley Quinn. When you take away the jokes, which are, by the way, Mr. Freeze in Harley Quinn is absolutely hilarious. The episode where Harley and the team have to go and because different crime lords have taken over sections of Gotham and they got to go take over the one. It's Beyonce. They got to know it's Lady Gaga. That was right. Oh, I love that part from Clayface. Anyway, but they get into the stuff with him and his wife. It's hilarious, but on a philosophical level, it's very, very much quintessential Mr. Freeze. And I love that part of it. At any rate, guys, question is for you. What do you think? Is a character like Mr. Freeze, who's a little bit more on the fantastical side, but is that a character that if you found a way to do it, you could ground him enough that he would feel not out of place in like a Matt Reeves Batman universe? What do you guys think? Yes or no? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down into the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. Hey guys, we want to take a second and thank a sponsor of today's video, the good folks at Manscaped. You know, I was in the shower the other day and I looked down and I thought, my goodness, the boys look fantastic. Dr. Jack Hammer, the amazing Mr. Fantastical, have never looked or felt better, and that is in part due to our friends at Manscaped. Because our friends at Manscaped are the global leaders in below-the-waist hygiene and are turning men's shower dreams into their favorite routine with the all-new Ultra Premium Collection. This all-in-one hygiene skin and hair bundle is designed to upgrade the everyday man's shower routine from head to toe. Your skin, hair, and balls deserve the best, my friends. You start off using the cologne-infused ultra-premium body wash with aloe vera and sea salt to keep your skin feeling clean and moisturized all day. Then boom, it's time to take care of your hair. Simply apply the 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner that cleanses and nourishes your hair all in one step. Then once you dry yourself off and hop out of the shower, it's time to protect yourself from body odor by applying the Manscaped aluminum-free deodorant. And do you have tattoos or any dry skin? A lot of us do. It's time to hit your skin with the hydrating body moisturizer spray. Cap it all off by applying some Manscaped lip balm. And then last but not least, we're moving on to the Lawnmower 4.0 electric trimmer to clean off any unwanted body hair. So guys, get 20% off plus free shipping with the code Campea, that's Campea at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code Campea at manscaped.com.